We'll wait just a few minutes while the room populates before we begin. We'll wait just a few minutes while the attendees join before we begin.
I don't know if anyone heard me. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Angela.
Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
Good to see you all.
Good to see you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome everyone to the 89th meeting of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Review Committee. My name is Melanie O'Brien, and I am the designated federal official to the NAGPRA Review Committee. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. The recording, transcript, and meeting minutes will be made publicly available after this meeting and will include the names of those in attendance during today's call. If you object to this, you may disconnect at this time. This is a public meeting of the Federal Advisory Committee established by the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, NAGPRA, of 1990. And this meeting is held under the Federal Advisory Committee Act, or FACA, and its implementing regulations. This meeting was noticed in the Federal Register on July 25th, 2024. An agenda for this meeting and materials are posted to the NAGPRA program events page. The Secretary of the Interior issued a charter for this review committee, which governs its objectives and scope of activities. The purpose of this review committee is to monitor and review the inventory and identification process and repatriation activities under sections 5, 6, and 7 of the Act. The review committee is also responsible for reporting to Congress on the progress and any barriers encountered in carrying out its responsibilities. FACA requires that the advisory committee membership be fairly balanced in terms of point of view represented and functions to be performed. To achieve this, NAGPRA requires that the review committee is comprised of 7 members, 3 members nominated by Indian tribes, Native Hawaiian organizations, and traditional Native American religious leaders, with at least 2 such persons being traditional Indian religious leaders. 3 members nominated by national museum organizations and scientific organizations, and 1 member appointed from a list of persons developed and consented to by all other members. Members are appointed by the Secretary of the Interior and serve as advisors to the Secretary on NAGPRA-related issues. There are currently 2 vacancies on the committee following the end of the 4-year terms of Shelby Tisdale and Tim McEwen in June. We solicited nominations from museum and scientific organizations in May, and those nominations were forwarded to the Secretary of the Interior in August, but no appointments have been made. There are currently 5 members of the review committee in attendance, and there is no quorum requirement for this committee. So although we have fewer than 7 members present, I've determined that this meeting can proceed. With that as an introduction, I'd like to start with a roll call of the committee members. Please answer out loud. Holly Aloha Ayau.
Present.
Dominique de Beaubien.
Present.
Angela Garcia Lewis.
Present.
Armand Menthorn.
Here.
Toby Patrick.
Here.
Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge the individuals assisting me in conducting this meeting. We have 2 attorneys from the Department of the Interior Office of the Solicitor, Brady Blasco with the Division of Parks and Wildlife, and Stephen Simpson with the Division on Indian Affairs. From the National NAGPRA program team, Lisa Kochelski is the review committee coordinator responsible for organizing this meeting and preparing the minutes and transcripts of these proceedings. With that as introduction, I'll call this meeting to order. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to you for a traditional opening.
Yes, I would like to ask Toby Patrick, our Native American religious leader, to please bless us with an opening. Pule.
I sing a worship song and from our country here, from our home. I'll say a little prayer after I'm all done with this little song. Thank you. I'd like to ask the Creator to watch over each and every one of your hearts, your minds, and your bodies. I'd like to ask the Creator to watch over your home, your house, your ayat, your hama, your man, your husband, your wife, all your aunties, all your uncles, your grandmas, and your grandparents, your grandchildren. I pray to the Creator for all those that you hold dear to your heart, that this prayer will reach them, take care of them, heal them, help them in a good way, move us all along in a good way with what's going on and what's to be presented here today and what we're to do for our people, so that our future generations can have something to look back on, to see that we're still caring for them. These are the things that I pray for to you, to the Creator here today, for each and every one of us. Welcome, Tots Clark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Before we begin our first agenda item, I would like to note that the review committee is very interested in hearing comments from anyone in attendance today during the public comment section of this meeting. If you're interested in providing public comment during this meeting, please let me know when I ask for public comment. At that time, I will turn on the chat feature so you can raise your hand or request to make comment. The first item on the agenda today is a presentation. Prior to scheduling this meeting, we received one request for a presentation to the review committee from Stuart Akagi. I would like to remind the audience that any Indian tribe, Native Hawaiian organization, museum, or federal agency may submit requests for presentations at future meetings of the review committee by sending an email to me at nagpra_info@nps.gov. Give me just a moment to allow Mr. Akagi to join us. Okay, just a moment while I try to allow him to join us. Mr. Akagi, you should be able to unmute.
Recording in progress.
Mr. Akagi, you should be able to turn on your video and unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Great, thank you. Sorry, I'm not very good at doing Zoom. I've only been on one time before. Thank you. We're good. I'm in the Alaska State Museum here in Juneau, Alaska. I'd like you to see, first off, I'm here with the clan leader of the Kikseti, Ray Wilson, on Yanuk. He is joining me today. And Joey Zuboff, the clan leader of the Daishitan, was going to be here also, but I believe he couldn't make it back to town. These are the items that I am caretaker of. I keep in the museum here. And I'm just going to give you a brief rundown. 1965, I was born, and in 1965, the clan leader of the Kagwantan, Yakwan, died in Dundas Bay in a boating accident. And when word got back to Huna, where the wolf house was, the Kagwantan wolf house, all of these items were stolen from the wolf house. I went to court, I believe in 2016, and got Joe Geldof as a lawyer. And he was my third lawyer. Everybody said it was impossible to get these items back. And when I finally got to Joe, Joe knew what to do. And we brought these items back to the Kagwantan clan. I got them from the Federal Museum at the Park Service, where they were put into the museum, hidden from everybody, basically. I got these items back and had to have a potlatch to bring them back out, kind of they're reborn. These are clan items, and I am the caretaker as of the moment, and I don't own these items. These are all clan items. There's 72 pieces, and we can't bring them all out, but we had to have this in this part of the museum to be able to get internet. Hoots, Andy Gamble was the leader of the Cogwanton at the time I had this party and brought these items out. And when shortly after that party, Andy died and left me as clan leader of the Cogwanton. And so that was taking up all claims, Western and Tlingit. And so before Andy died, I had been sending in letters to University of Pennsylvania on Andy's behalf. And then when Andy died, I took over the claims and started trying to repatriate the pieces. At that point, I had been given the runaround, I believe, by the University of Pennsylvania, and I don't believe I ever had a shot at bringing those items home. The way that that happened was when Andy went to the museum over there, he took some people with him because Tlingit and Haida had money for taking people over to the museum. And so they got some people from Sitka, and they went over, and then when they came back, those people put in a counterclaim for those 5 hats from the University of Pennsylvania. They shouldn't have put in a counterclaim because Andy was the Cogwanton clan leader. And so Sitka Tribe of Alaska was playing games with Tlingit and Haida. And they put in for the items, and so it locked the items up for years. They couldn't go anywhere. I got a lawyer again, and we went and we had a meeting with Richard Peterson from Tlingit and Haida. And as soon as he found out that the Cogwanton didn't need the pieces to be taken care of by Tlingit and Haida, that they would be in the museum where they are safe and the right temperature and free, or the fire and water, and they're safe. Soon as he found that out, he dropped the claim, the original claim from, I believe in 2011, and let Sitka tribes win. I don't believe that federally recognized tribes should be able to play God with Cogwanton items. All these items are clan items and shouldn't be repatriated to a federally recognized tribe who's only been around since 1993. And, you know, these rules were made up in 1971 and they were thrown together. And I don't believe that they got it right. And then also the repatriating to direct descendants. That doesn't work either. They would not be of the same or the right clan. They would not line up. These are clan items. And so the only people that should be repatriating are clans. And my lawyer, Joe Geldof, was hoping to meet with you guys, and he's on an airplane right now, and I couldn't be here or be in on this. But he said that he wanted to be able to try and get a meeting with you, and I realize that's going to be impossible. But he's also going to meet with Lisa Murkowski and Senator Sullivan, and I've been talking to them for quite a while now, and I've been trying to get them to change the laws in Congress. And I understand that they're trying to draft a bill, and it would be somewhat similar to the Museum of the American Indian possibly, or just a little bit of differences. And what I'd like you to do is recommend to Congress that clans have a say in what happens with their objects, not federally recognized tribes. They have nothing to do with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Could I say something?
Yes, of course.
My name is Raymond Wilson. I'm the head of the Kicksadi clan in Sitka. When I was put in the hat, we had to walk into the hat. The hat wasn't put on us. These hats are real old. They've been carved a long time ago by the opposite clan. And their love and their spirit went into these hats. So I heard a story about when we were warring with the other tribes in Southeast Alaska, that the war cry was "Save the hat." The hat represents the clan, and the clan represents the hat. So when the war cry went out to save the hat, it also meant to save the village when they were under attack. These hats are full of spirits of our people, not nobody else. This hat belongs to the Kicksadi clan, not to nobody else. When we started to get these things back, everybody was real happy. But then Slick and Haida, as far as I know, started to take charge, said that NAGPRA gave them the authority to take our hats. So this is what we're trying to straighten out. The hat means a lot to the clan. It holds the clan together. So this is why these hats are so important to us. Right now, we're going through troubled times, and the hats are coming out of the museum, but they're not coming back to the clan. They're going to Slick and Haida and Sitka tribe, and these are new entities. They're not. They don't have nothing. They don't have nothing to do with these hats. These hats belong to the clans, not to Slick and Haida or Sitka tribe. So if you want to ask me some questions, I'll be glad to answer. I'm 91 years old and I don't hear very good, but I wanted to speak for our hats because they can't talk for themselves. it's up to us to speak for the hats. The hats need to come back to us as clan leaders, not the clique of the Haida or Sitka tribe. With that, I'll stop there. I know there's a lot more to say, but right now my mind went blank. So
I'd like to add one thing to that. My mom, Eunice Wanamaker, was born in 1920 in Sitka. Her dad was leader of the Kikseti, and he had the frog hat. The frog hat was in my mother's house when she was growing up. And when my grandfather died, he had the next person in line. That person sold that hat. And my lawyer, Joe Geldof, got it back along with the governor in the 80s. The other one, the killer whale hat here. Give me just a minute to tell you about that. The killer whale hat was in the house where my grandmother was born in Sitka in 1880. Her the leader of that house and the leader of the Kakwantan was Tlantich. And Tlantich had this hat, and he was the leader of the Kakwantan when my grandmother was born in that house. And so when my mother in 1965, when I was born, my mother had already lost both of the hats from being able to use at funerals and potlatches and that type of thing. And so this was something that came to me. The fight for these things came to me when, you know, my ancestors, who these things meant so much to, weren't able to get these and use them at these functions. I want to tell you about this hat real quickly. The Kita Nyeti came from where the Kakwantan came from, at Kuknawu, at the mouth of Glacier Bay. And they've done studies there, and they can tell that people have been there for 7,000 years. And so this was carved in 1770 at Kuknawu, the Grouse Fort, by a carver named Stag One. Kananik needed a hat to wear for a kuik. And this hat was carved for him. So when they brought out this hat, before they put it on the leader, he strangled 4 slaves. After he died, it passed to his youngest nephew, who was the one that took the hat to Sitka. He was going to kill 4 slaves when he brought the hat out, but instead he freed them by waving a speaker staff over them. The speaker staff is in the Museum of Ethnology in St. Petersburg, Russia. After him, it was passed to his nephew, who freed 2 slaves in like fashion. The next caretaker freed 1 slave, a Haida. After his death, there were no nephews in his line, so it went to a grand aunt who gave it to her son. And she held them over a pile of blankets. Slaves were too hard to come by then. So blankets became the new currency. This caretaker died not long after receiving the hat. It was then passed to his brother, who was taken to court by Tlantich. That's my name also. And so that would have been before 1880. And he was given custody of the hat. I have every name of every leader since that hat was carved in 1770. It was our families who were dealing with the Russians at the time. So when you say, you know, what's one of these hats worth? Well, with all the spirits of all the people that have been killed in all the wars that these have been through, and that's what the meaning of these hats are. So again, I'm asking you to recommend to Congress that the clans in this, at least in Southeast Alaska, be the ones that are receiving their objects back. At Tlingit and Haida, you know, they talk about in the paper, they've received over 130 items, and that's probably way more than that by now. And who are they? You know, they don't have anything to do with us. And I don't believe that Andy Gamble was given a fair shake by the University of Pennsylvania. The University of Pennsylvania has the people from Sitka Tribe of Alaska on their website, you know, like, and they talk fondly of them. And you never hear them say anything about Andy. And they were giving Andy the runaround the whole time. Sitka Tribe of Alaska didn't have a clan leader that they're repatriating for. And I don't believe that the Kagwantan ever had a shot at their items. Are there any questions?
I don't have, this is Halialoha Yao from Hawaii. Just wanted to mahalo you both for your presentation. I don't have a question, but I do have a suggestion that we, if we could receive more background information on the things that you addressed us about, so we're in a better position to perhaps make recommendations. One, if we could get research on this for inclusion in our fiscal year 2025 report. And then perhaps members to consider an upcoming meeting in Alaska to, I guess, further discuss these matters.
Would you say that one more time about the meeting in Alaska?
I was suggesting to our review committee members of a possible meeting in Alaska.
Oh, yes. You know,
But first, we need more background information on
yeah,
this matter, since we weren't, you know, frankly didn't know what the presentation was going to be about.
okay, yeah, you know, I believe that you can look back and see about April or January 15th, they put out the notice and gave those 5 clan hats to Sitka Tribe of Alaska on April 14 or 15. And there's a lot of information in there, you know, and some of the information is kind of disturbing, you know, where it talks about the man who took these items walking into the house, the clan house where it was stored, and taking it. And although the only thing that could happen was the old lady's weeping as he took it out of there, because he says if there was one warrior there, he would never be able to take that piece. And he was coming through in the summertime when all the guys were out fishing, and there was no men in town to guard these items. And I understand that people were camped out on their porch in Sitka and protecting their items from being stolen. And so, you know, when it says that some of these items were paid for, I don't believe it, because that's not the story that we hear around here. All right, well, thank you for having me, and if there's anything more that I can do.
Yeah, I got a
I'm-
question.
Okay,
You were saying that the Sitka tribe is a federally recognized tribe. And what was your tribe again? What was your clan?
I'm a Tlingit Kagwantan. There are 18 houses in the Kagwantan, and it was the biggest tribe of Tlinkits in Alaska at the time. And due to dealing with the Russians, most of those people died off. There was only 2 families that lived from the two-door house in Sitka, and the smallpox took out entire villages.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
You hear you?
Yes, Simon?
um, first, I want to thank you, Stuart, for your presentation and also to hear the words from the elder, Mr. Wilson. And it's always good when we can hear elders' words. The question, Stuart, is, are there any oral histories, photos, or written record that can help with your effort?
Well, not really, because I keep running into people like Dr. Woods in Pennsylvania. I've been trying to get these things back for years, and it's like you're never able to talk to him. They don't answer the questions. They don't get the information from Sitka Tribe of Alaska, such as who their clan leader. And I know there's a whole bunch of rules that you're supposed to go by, but I think they're skirting around the rules there a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and um, it was good to have Ray here to have a different perspective. That's the same perspective that my mother and all my aunts and uncles had. And it's good to have that. And sorry that I didn't have more clan leaders here at the time.
What I heard about, this is Ray Wilson again. What I heard about NAGPRA, all the clan leaders were happy because we were going to start getting our things back from the museum. And then when it started going to Haida and Sitka tribe, the clan leaders are saying, we don't want it to come back and go to somebody else. We wanted them to stay in the museum. That's because we don't want it to fall in other people's hands. But I think NAGPRA is a good thing. It's good for the Native people and good for the clans. And it just needs to be, the wording needs to be changed in NAGPRA so that it reads that these items will go back to the clans that they took it from.
Anybody else?
I will just add that, Mr. Akagi, we happy to accept a written comment from your lawyer, who was unable to attend. So if there is anything additional that he would like to provide, including any specific suggestions for that congressional language, we'd be happy to accept that in writing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for listening to us, and have a good day.
Aloha.
Good to see you.
The next item on the agenda is a report from the National NAGPRA program. I would like to provide the committee with a brief update on the work of the National NAGPRA program since I last reported to you in May. As many of you know, since January, we have hosted a series of monthly webinars, and attendance at those sessions has been very robust, topping 700 attendees at some sessions. During each webinar, we have provided specific information on the NAGPRA regulations, but also allowed time for questions. And in addition to the webinars, we have had a large number of inquiries for technical assistance by phone and email. As I also reported to you in May, we continue to receive a record-breaking number of Federal Register notices. Since October 1st of 2023, we've received 609 notices for publication. And so far this fiscal year, we've published 644 notices. Notice submissions have increased to between 20 to 25 notices per week. For this year, Congress appropriated $3.4 million for grants. The grant programs support two types of grant projects, project grants up to $100,000 for consultation and documentation, and repatriation grants of up to $20,000 for direct repatriation expenses. We announced grant awards in August of just over $3 million. And as a reminder to the audience, funds are still available for repatriation grants until May of 2025, or until the remaining funds are expended. So we do encourage and hope that museums and tribes will continue to apply for repatriation grants as needed throughout the year. As the designated federal official to this review committee, it's also my responsibility to track secretarial appointments. As I mentioned earlier, we have submitted nominations to the Secretary of the Interior for the two vacancies currently on the committee. In addition, Secretary Holland appointed Armin Menthorn to a 2-year term that started October 7th of 2022 and will end in just a few weeks. Since 1997, Armin has served 4 terms and participated in over 32 meetings, having served as the chair for 16 of those meetings. We solicited nominations for that position in May as well, but we did not receive any nominations from Indian tribes or Native Hawaiian organizations for Armin's position. So we will be publishing a new notice to solicit nominations from Indian tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations in the coming weeks. We will report on the other areas of our work in our next annual report once the fiscal year ends on Monday. And once again, I'd like to commend the staff of the National NAGPRA program and the Department of the Interior for the efforts that allow the program to uphold all of its responsibilities. I know that was just a brief report, so if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But again, we will be issuing our annual report in the coming weeks.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to comment on how really good it was to hear about the high number of notices that are being published and repatriations that are going forward. So thank you for the good work.
Okay, should I move on to the next item?
Members of any questions for Melanie? All right, let's move on.
Okay, then next item on the agenda is public comment. At every meeting of the review committee, there is time for public comment, which is a requirement under the Federal Advisory Committee Act, or FACA. If you're interested in providing public comment, you may raise your hand, or you may send a request through the chat. I'm turning on the ability for attendees to send a chat to me to let me know if you're interested in making public comment. So again, please raise your hand or put your name in the chat and I will allow you to unmute and provide your public comment. As a reminder, the review committee can also accept written comment. Okay, Valerie Grusing has raised her hand. Valerie, you should be able to unmute.
Okay, I think I did that.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. I was trying to give others a chance to talk first, so if I'm jumping in front of everyone, if anyone out there, please forgive me. I wanted to comment, and I also sent this in writing, but at the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers, NASPO, we realize we have kind of a unique role with regard to program alternatives, in particular programmatic agreements that the Advisory Council of Historic Preservation, of which we are a voting member, but just one voting member, manages and oversees. Unlike our counterpart organization, the National Conference of SHPOs, we don't represent TIPOs and even our dues paying members in the same kind of relationship that Nick SHPO does to the SHPOs. It's a sovereignty thing. We would never presume to speak on behalf of or sign an agreement that would bind a tribe to anything at all. And so that's sort of the answer to the question that frequently comes up of why Nick SHPO is able to sign agreement documents and NAPO is not. But then the result is that while the federal agencies' consultation obligations remain to individual tribes, the way that that frequently plays out in reality is unsatisfactory at best. And so we implore agencies to use NAFPO as a communication and coordination mechanism, consider us a resource and a conduit to help elevate issues for TIPOs so that they can have some assistance in the survival mode and the triage mode with paying attention to things that they might not otherwise make their triage cut. So all of that to say, it came to my attention just last week that a nationwide programmatic agreement that the Park Service has been working on, and in which we have engaged in discussions and provided feedback. There has been some targeted outreach from the Park Service all along, but it was mentioned during an ACHP committee meeting last week. I have to confess that I was having a hard time with my connectivity and hearing every word that was said. So I'm not going to go on the record and say whether it was announced last week that the NPA was finalized publicly, because if it was, I missed it. And so I discovered after the fact and doing a little digging that this NPA had indeed been finalized back in July. And the outreach that we had been receiving had stopped. So I was not aware whether my last repeated comments had been addressed, and let alone that the agreement had been finalized. And I bring that up here because the comments pertain to NAGPRA. And so the NPA is to help bring cultural resources grants, Park Service cultural resources grants into compliance with Section 106, the actual grant making. And with regard to NAGPRA, I was glad to see in the review committee's draft report, which I also found to be available on the website last week. So thanks for posting that. That this is of interest to the committee as well, and it's on page 15. That this particular NPA is talked about, and the suggestions that we had been making to strengthen this part of the NPA had not been incorporated, and we had not been aware that the NPA had moved on and been finalized anyway. And so we're concerned about the wiggle room that the language as finalized gives regarding compliance with federal NAGPRA, to be quite plain. And I think the committee actually lays it out pretty well in that section on page 15. And I don't have much to add to that. But I had also sent along my email correspondence with the red line changes that we had been suggesting. And they're minor language changes that make a big difference with regard to discretion that folks have in the grant making. And so thank you for your time. That is my comment. And I think the committee for its interest in this issue, and happy to provide any additional clarification over email.
Thank you. At this time, we do not have any other requests for public comment. Again, if you wish to request to make a public comment, you can raise your hand or let me know in the chat. Again, we have no other requests for public comment. Mr. Chair, how would you like to proceed?
We'll continue on to item 4, unless there's, and if further comments come in, then we can take it at that time.
Certainly, I will let you know if any other hands are raised
Okay.
or comments requested. Okay, the final item on the agenda is the report to Congress for 2024. I will turn the conversation over to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, before I start, are there any comments from the Park Service on our report before I get into there's a couple changes that I want to introduce before we take up the motions to act on the report.
I have no comments. I will say that I only have the PDF copy of the report. So if you are making changes, I will need you to track those on your side.
Sure, I'm going to upload them to the chat so that folks can see them. And then there are 2 of them, one dealing with revising the description of the current meeting because it was unclear initially what the first item was that a presentation or a public comment? And then there's an addition of the additional information. By the way, thank you for following up with Arizona State University to get the cost estimate information. Okay, so I'd like to proceed with that. Let me upload the first. And you said to click everyone, yeah? And we'll just read it on page 4. Revising the description of the current meeting. The 89th meeting of the review committee was held telephonically for a number of hours on September 23rd, 2024. During the meeting, the review committee approved its FY 2024 report to Congress and directions for distributions. Benefited from a presentation by Stuart Akagi and Raymond Wilson from Tlingit Kagwantan clan, as well as comments from members of the public. That's the first one. Oh wait, I'm doing this right. Oh, there. There you go. Okay, it's up, and then now let me upload the second text change to the report again to everyone. This is on page 17, adding the cost estimates from Arizona State University. Arizona State University School of Human Evolution and Social Change, which holds the remains of 806 Native American individuals and 1,362 associated funerary objects, estimates that it will cost $10 million over the next 10 years to consult and prepare notices of inventory completion as required by the new regulations. So these are the two new text changes to the FY24 draft report. Now I would like to entertain a motion to authorize the chair to make non-substantive technical corrections to the text prior to submitting the final report on October 1st, 2024.
So moved.
Moved by Dominique. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Angela. Discussion.
Question?
Yes, Toby.
I just ready to approve this. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, let me repeat the motion to authorize the chair to make non-substantive technical corrections to the text prior to submitting the final report on October 1st, 2024. Moved by Dominique, seconded by Angela. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Did we hear? Is Armin here?
Aye.
All right. Chair abstains. The motion passes 4 to nothing. All right, thank you. Chair wants to thank the subcommittee members for their good work on the draft FY 2024 report. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the FY 2024 report to Congress.
So moved.
Was that you, Dominique?
Yes.
Moved by Dominique,
Second.
seconded by Angela. Discussion. Having heard none, I would like to conduct a roll call vote for this motion. If you're in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Dominique DeBobian,
Aye.
Angela Garcia Lewis,
Aye.
Armin Minthorn,
Aye.
Toby Patrick,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So the motion passes 5 to nothing. The FY 2024 report is approved by the committee. Now I'd like to entertain a motion to direct Melanie to post the October 1st final version of the FY 24 report to Congress in the materials folder for the current meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Dominique. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Uh, Who seconded? Sorry, I heard two voices. Who's first?
I went
Toby.
second.
Okay. Seconded by Toby. Discussion. Having heard none favor,
I'm having a hard time hearing.
say aye.
Mr. Chair, I think we're having some connection issues.
I can repeat the motion was to
I'm gonna recommend, Mr. Chair, that maybe you turn off your video so we can,
Oh.
we're
Okay.
unable to hear you.
Does it help now with the video off?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, Roger. Let me repeat the motion to direct Melanie to post the October 1st final version of the FY 24 report to Congress in the materials folder for the current meeting. Moved by Dominique, seconded by Toby. There was no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 I've heard two voices so far.
Aye.
Toby said, votes aye. Armin?
Aye.
Armin votes aye. Chair votes aye on this. The motion passes 5 to nothing. Melanie, I ask that you ensure the report is posted as directed by the committee, please. Now I'd like to move to take up the proposed distribution list. First, Melody, can you please confirm whether last year's committee report has been sent to everyone on the FY 23 list?
It has been sent to everyone except 3 individuals. I've made the request for the report to be sent, but it has not been sent.
This effort, for the most part, has been unsatisfactory, and the committee has every right to expect a better distribution this year. I propose that the committee direct staff to send paper copies to each named recipient and not just an email link. I would like to entertain a motion to accept the FY 24 distribution list and direct staff to distribute the FY 24 report by paper copy and not only by an email link.
So moved.
Moved by Dominique. Their second.
Second.
Second by Toby. Question. Is there any discussion? Having heard none, all in favor say aye.
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 Armand? Is Armand in the room?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So that's a motion passes, and the distribution list and manner of distribution are both approved by the committee. I would like to point out that it took months for the department to approve the cover letter distributing the FY 23 report, and that is unacceptable. With timeliness in mind, I propose that the committee direct the department to distribute the FY 24 report within 30 days of receipt. If Melanie, do we have an update yet on the possible government shutdown on October 1st? That will impact this motion.
I have not checked the newspaper this morning. I don't believe that a budget has been passed. So at this point, we have no update.
Still up in the air, yeah. Okay, then I would like to entertain a motion to direct the department to distribute the FY 24 report within 30 days of receipt or 30 days from the end of any government shutdown.
So moved.
Moved by Dominique. There's second.
Second.
Seconded by Toby. Discussion. Having heard none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Toby votes aye. Was that you, Angela?
That was Dominique.
Okay, Dominique votes aye.
I,
Angela votes aye. Armin?
Aye.
Armin votes aye and chair votes aye. The motion passes. That brings an end to our, I think, our work on this agenda item. I just wanted to say, you know, in some closing thought that our meeting procedures include collaboration on meeting agenda items, which really didn't happen here with the first agenda item. And can we please work more closely on that in the future? It would have been good to have had background information on this, on the issue that was presented, so that we were better prepared to ask questions and possibly make comments and recommendations. So I'll try to work, Melanie, let's work better on that in the next meeting so that we have more information up front, especially the summary of the presentation, so we know what we're what we will be hearing and how we can better prepare for that. With that, I believe we're done with the report to Congress for FY 2024 agenda item 4.
That is the last agenda item for this meeting.
Are there any other public individuals who wanted to comment?
No, I have no other requests for public comment.
Okay, so that brings our meeting to an end.
Yes, we can adjourn the meeting. Would you like to provide a closing, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I would.
And would you like me to stop the recording?
Please.